Alhamdulillah, Alhamdulillahi wa kafa wa salamun ala ibadihi alladhina istafa khususan ala sayyidil awwaleen wal akhirin wa khatamin nabiyyin wal mursalin sayyidina wa nabiyyina wa Maulana Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa baraka wa sallama tasliman kathiran kathira. أما بعد فقد قال الله تبارك وتعالى في القرآن المجيد والفرقان الحميد قل إن كنتم تحبون الله فاتبعوني يحببكم الله ويغفر لكم ذنوبكم والله غفور رحيم. صدق الله العلي العظيم وصدق رسوله النبي الكريم ونحن على ذلك لمن الشاهدين والشاكرين والحمد لله رب العالمين. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا محمد كما صليت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد. اللهم بارك على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا محمد كما باركت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد. Respected elders, my young brothers, my friends, and my honorable brothers and sisters. Unfortunately, the period and the time which is passing by is a time and is a period in which the infection, the virus, very widely has spread and many people have become its victims. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala save all of us from this infection, this virus, and those who have become its victims, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant them a very quick recovery. My respected listeners and my elders, today is the Jumatul Mubarak, a blessed day, a day known as Sayyid al-Ayyam, the chief of all the days. And the particular ibadat in this day, our wazifa of this day is to do the recitation of Surah Al-Kahf and send abundantly salutation on our beloved Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. My respected elders and my young friends, from the previous last 2 weeks, I have been shedding light on the Sunnat of our beloved Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. How important it is for a believer to adopt the Sunnat of Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam in his daily life. We, as I've mentioned before, we cannot reach Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we cannot gain the closeness of our beloved sallallahu alaihi wasallam unless we follow his sunnahs in our daily life, in all our worldly matters. If through the sunnat, if through the teachings of Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, we will gain the nearness of Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, also we will gain the nearness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. How important it is to follow, I've mentioned last week, the Sahaba Kiram, how much importance they gave to the Sunnah of Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and our elders and our ancestors. When we read the biography of their lives, we will find that they would not even let go of very small Sunnah of Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and they would not ignore it. Haji Ibn Abdullah Muhajir Makki rahmatullah alayhi, he mentions about himself that once there was at home, there was a shortage of food, there was no food, I was going through poverty. And I came and I asked one of my very close friend to borrow me 5 rupees. But unfortunately, he just refused to borrow me the 5 rupees. And he goes, the starvation was such that I couldn't bear it. And then I thought, why not upon the Sunnat of my beloved Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Whenever our Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam went through starvation, he would tie stone on his stomach in order to keep his back straight. So I tied 2 stones on my stomach with the intention and with the need that this is the Sunnat of my beloved Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. I'm going through the starvation. Our beloved Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam used to go through such starvation, and he used to tie the stone. Sahaba Ikram on occasions, and Sahaba Ikram would have 1 stone, and Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam used to have 2 stones tied up on his stomach. Just imagine our Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, how much hardship he had to go through for the sake of this deen and for the sake of his followers. So Hatim Makki rahmatullahi alayhi mentions that as soon as I tied these 2 stones on my stomach, straight away, instantly, I felt the light in my heart, and I felt the light in my eyes. And he said that after a while, what I saw 2 beautiful, handsome, 2 young boys walking in front of me and holding one another's hands. And then later on, somebody asked Hazrat, who are these 2 men you saw who just walked by in front of you? He said, Allah subhanahu, these were 2 angels in the form of human beings. One was Jibreel alayhi salatu wasalam, and one was Mikail alayhi salatu wasalam. And so the questioner said, Hazrat, what was the indication of this? He said, the indication of this, by seeing Jibreel alayhi salatu wasalam, inshallah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will grant me with the divine knowledge. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will put the knowledge in my heart. And by seeing Mikail, because Jibreel alayhi salatu wasalam used to bring the messages of Allah to the prophets. So he said, this is the indication. And by seeing Mikail in the form of a human being, it was the indication that inshallah, from now on, I will never go through starvation, I will never go through poverty. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will bless me with the names. And then he said, by putting my trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, whosoever will enter into my chain, I can with the hope of Allah, I can say that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, all those who will enter my chain, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will grant them the knowledge, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will grant them prosperity, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, whosoever will be in my chain, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, at the time of death, Allah will grant him husn khatima. He will go from this dunya with iman. He will go from this dunya with iman. My respected elders and my young brothers, husn khatima, the good death, is to go from this dunya with iman. I would just listen to our Hazrat Maulana Bilal Daman Barakatuh Aliya's bayan. He said, on one occasion, I attended a namaz janazah with our Hazrat Maulana Yusuf Mutala Navarallahu Baqadahu. And he said, prior to the janazah, our Hazrat just gave a speech, a talk for 5 minutes. And he said something in that speech, even today, is echoing in my ears, as if I'm hearing today from his mouth. He said before the speech, while he was giving, before the Salat Janazah, while he was giving a talk, in the talk he said 96% people go from this dunya without iman. Because the severe attack of the shaitan, the shaitan, he is our enemy. As soon as the child comes to this dunya, the shaitan is with every child. And this shaitan stays with us till our last breath. And shaitan, he launches so many attacks upon the human being. If you compare his one attack, which will take place at the time of death, with all the attacks which he launched while a person was alive, these all attacks will mean nothing to that very attack which is at the time of death. At the time of death, his final attack. And that attack, very few people remain safe from his attack which is at the time of death. So our Hazrat Rahmatullah used to say, even Imam Abu Hanifa Rahmatullah used to say that many people, the majority at the time of death, shaitan overcomes them and they go from this dunya with iman. He snatches the iman from them at the time of death. So my respected young brothers, the ulama have written so many books. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant them long life who are alive. And those who have passed away, we make a dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, oh Allah, you shower your mercy, rahmat upon their graves. They say there are so many things that can become cause of our su'e khatma, bad death, leaving the dunya with iman. They say one of them is to ignore the sunnah of Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam deliberately. To ignore the sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam deliberately is one of the cause of having a bad death when a person leaves this dunya. So my respected elders, we should keep on making a dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala at all times that, oh Allah, give us a husn khatima, that oh Allah, take us from this dunya iman. Just imagine whatever is being, just imagine and just ponder over this, that everything that is being done, everything that we do, why do we do it? Hajj, we perform Hajj, we give zakat, we offer 5 daily prayers, we read Quran, we try to do all sorts of good deeds. What is the purpose behind all this? The purpose is only one, and that is we please Allah and we go from this dunya with iman. This is the purpose of objective of doing all these good deeds. So we should make a dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When we look, when we read the biography of the previous our predecessors, and so many have come, such that in Shaitan at the time of death, he just came and he just snatched their iman. So we should make a dua, especially my respected elders. This Friday, it's a very blessed day. Friday, on this very day, our Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam has mentioned in a hadith that there is a moment on Friday. Whosoever gets a chance to make a dua in that very moment, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will answer his call and Allah will answer his dua. Whatever he will ask, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will grant him. So we should keep on making, while we are working, while we are walking, dua, subhanallah, how merciful Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is. We don't for dua, we don't have to be sitting in the masjid, we don't have to be sitting in a state of wudu, we don't have to be sitting we have to be in a position of tashahhud to make a dua. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is a listener, we make a dua to Allah while we are walking, while we are working. So especially on this day, when we are Friday, just keep on making dua in your heart while you're walking, while you're driving, while you're working, that Allah, you grant me iman when I leave from this dunya. Take me from this dunya with iman. So I was saying that the iman, it's a very valuable asset of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala which He has bestowed upon us. So we should make a dua to Allah at all times. Oh Allah, keep our iman safe. Oh Allah, don't let this iman to become the target of the shaitan's attacks. So I was saying that doing the mukhalafat of Sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, deliberately, ignoring the Sunnah of the Prophet, it could become cause of leaving this dunya without iman. So our Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam sunnats. So I was saying, Hajj ibn Abdullah rahmatullah used to say that whosoever will enter my chain, inshallah, I can hope and I'm putting the trust in Allah that he will leave this dunya with iman. And when we read the biography and when we read the books, we find so many people who try to disrespect the Sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. My respected elders and my mothers and sisters and my young brothers, remember one thing. There are two things. One is that we maybe because of our laziness, because of our slackness, we sometimes just don't adopt the Sunnah. We just leave out the Sunnah. But there is another thing which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not like, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tolerate, that is making a mockery of the Sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. In our localities, in our households, if we see anyone actually up in the Sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, don't make a mockery of him. Don't mock at him that if somebody in the family wants to keep the beard, or if anybody wants to, if a woman wants to do the full parda, don't make a mockery of those who are acting up in the Sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Because two things. One is you yourself, you abad, you don't act up the Sunnah. This is another thing. But making a mockery, it is an act of the kuffar. Making a mockery of deen is an act of the kuffar, the disbelief. If you open the Quran, you will find the kuffar, the non-believers, they used to mock the Prophet, and they used to mock at what the Prophet used to say to them. So whosoever make a mockery of any aspect of deen, and if any matter of deen, then you can leave. He may be thrown out of the fold of Islam, and he may lose his iman at the time of death. You find once Allama Ibn Kathir writes that once in Busra is a city in Syria. Allama Ibn Kathir writes that once someone was mentioning the fazail of the miswak. The miswak, a stick we use to clean our teeth, and it is Sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. This Sunnah of miswak, today we may not have given any importance to the miswak. We say, oh, what is a miswak? It's just a stick, we could clean our teeth with a toothbrush. It was fine, we can't do that. But remember, using a miswak, it is an established sunnah of our beloved Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Ulama have mentioned the benefits of miswak. They say there are hundreds of benefits in the miswak. Hundreds of benefits lie in miswak. They say that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, whosoever will daily do the miswak, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will remove the poverty from his household. And whosoever will use the miswak, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will remove the illnesses from him. And there's a hadith Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, which is in Kanzul Mal, that Rasulullah said, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has placed shifa from every illness and disease in the miswak except death. Just to imagine, there are hundreds of benefits, and one of them is also because of miswak at the time of death, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will take this believer with iman from this dunya. He will read the kalma, he will remember the kalma at the time of death because of miswak. And our beloved Prophet ﷺ, the final act of the final amal of Rasulullah ﷺ before he left this dunya was miswak. If you read the biography of Prophet ﷺ, you will find the very final amal of our Prophet ﷺ was to do the miswak before he passed away. So Allama Ibn Kathir mentions that the fazail of miswak were being mentioned, and this person, Abu Salama, his name was, and he was so disrespectful towards the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. You know what he said after hearing that this person is mentioning the fazail and the virtues of the miswak? You know what he said? He said, I'm going to use this miswak in my anal, in my bottom. Eventually he did it. Eventually, Allama Ibn Kathir rahmatullah alayhi, he writes that eventually just to mock at the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, just to make a mockery of Rasulullah, he placed his miswak in his bottom, and he said, what happened then? And now listen to this. Now what happened to him? The mockery brought for him. They say after 9 months, Allama Ibn Kathir rahmatullah writes this. After 9 months, he felt a pain in his stomach. And what happened? After 9 months, he gave a birth to a wild animal, similar to a wild rat. And this animal's face was like a fish, and he had a tail and 4 long teeth sticking out. And he gave a birth, and this animal, was a scary one. And after 3 days, this person died. This is the punishment he received from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala by mocking at the Sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So my respected elders, my mothers and sisters, never ever mock at any Sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. If we have done this in ignorance, make a tawbah to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Make a tawbah to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is there to accept our tawbah. And also, never ever ignore a hadith of Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam by just saying this is a da'if, this is a weak hadith. They say once a great muhaddis, he came across a hadith in which Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said once, copying is the Sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Copying is the Sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, one should avoid copying on Saturday and on Thursday. He said there is a possibility this person may, get caught and overcome by a disease of leprosy. So this person shouldn't do copying on these 2 days, Saturday and Thursday. So the muhaddis, when he came across this hadith, he said, well, in this hadith there is in the chain there's one ravi. There's one ravi who's da'if, and he said this hadith, class as a da'if hadith, weak hadith. So they said he deliberately had copying on one of these days. He said, this Rawi was a da'if, this hadith is da'if. I'm gonna have copying on these days in which Prophet prohibited. He said, there is a possibility one can catch the disease for leprosy. Eventually what happened? He caught the disease, the leprosy. He was overcome and he was caught by this disease. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's rahmat was on this person. He saw a dream. And in the dream he sees Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam. And he said, the Prophet of Allah, look, I am in this disease, make a dua for me. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam said, you are paying the price. But for what you have done. You said about my hadith, that this hadith is a da'if, and then deliberately, from thing I prohibited you deliberately, you adopted and you did it. While although this hadith, it was not mawdu, it was not fabricated, it was a da'if, because hadith becomes a da'if because of a chain, because sometimes a rawi, the narrator within the chain, sometimes his memory becomes very weak, and then the ulama, they class that hadith as a weak hadith. They say, because in the chain we find this one narrator, his memory was very weak, so therefore this hadith, that does not mean at all this is not a hadith. It is a hadith of Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So the imam, the muhaddis, he says to Prophet, "O Prophet of Allah, I've been called by this disease. You make a dua now." Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam made a dua for him, and it's written. As soon as Rasulullah made a dua for him in the dream, when he woke up, he found himself, he was healed from this, from this disease. So my respected elders, never ever mock at any sunnah of Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Never make a mockery of any matter of deen at all. When we find our friends, they're acting upon the deen and we are not. When we find any of our family member acting upon the deen and we are not, do not make a mockery at it, because making a mockery of any aspect of deen, it is an act of kuffar, and making mockery of the sunnah of Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam is something that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not like. So my respected elders, my young brothers, I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give us the tawfiq to respect every matter of deen and to adopt the sunnah of Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam in our daily lives. Wa akhiru da'wana alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen.